On today's episode, Kim starts some easy spring vegetables. Turfgrass specialist Justin Moss is controlling winter broadleaf weeds. Kim prunes clematis. We look at a beautiful evergreen in the garden. Justin Moss begins a demonstration comparing pre-emergent weed controls. And we say a special goodbye to a member of our team and make plans for the new gardening season. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Tulsa's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Every year, more and more gardeners are planting vegetables in the landscape. And this year, we've planned a garden full of very easy crops to grow for those new to vegetable gardening, or perhaps people wanting to introduce children to growing vegetables. And for our spring garden, primarily we're planting from seed. The one exception that we're going to work with today are onions. These are planted from sets, which are small plants. You can see they already have their roots developed and some shoots. And we'll plant these in the ground and they'll be quick to get started. You could find sets at garden centers or if you have a local agriculture store. But the remaining seeds, plants are grown from seed. And we're going to be putting our tallest plants in the middle of this bed. I'm placing 3 rows down the length of my bed with the tall plants in the middle. That'll be peas on one half of the garden and chard on the other. And interestingly, all but the chard is going to be spaced at 4 inches, so that's really easy to remember. So we're going to plant our peas at 4-inch intervals. And I have to pull off my glove here. As best you can. These seeds are large, so they're pretty easy to work with. Now you'll notice that I have a trellis in place above my peas. And peas do need some support as they grow. You don't have to get fancy, just using any variety of materials, string and any scrap wood you might have to create a support. Now you can see I'm burying the seeds pretty deep, about 1 inch up to 1.5 inches below the soil. Peas are quick to germinate. You could give them a little boost by soaking the seeds before you plant to help them come up even faster. Now on either side of the peas, I'm going to be growing spinach and radish, and then also beets on the other end. All 3 of these crops are planted in a very similar manner, and they have very little seeds, as we can look here. So it's a little bit harder to distribute these. The radish aren't too small, but it can be hard. The smaller the seed you have, the smaller it is to get them evenly spaced. So don't worry too much if the spacing isn't perfect. You can always come back later and thin the crop to your desired spacing. The smaller the seeds are, the harder it is to get accurate spacing, but you can always come back later and thin the plants out to your desired spacing. Now these seeds, in general, the smaller the seed, also the shallower they're planted. In the case of radish, spinach, and beets, we want to cover with about 1/2 inch of soil. Okay, our chard is going to be a little bit different. It has a wider spacing than the rest of these crops. We're going to space our chard at 6 inches. They get a little bit larger and just need some more room to grow. And these are going to be down at the other half of our garden. I have a really pretty colorful variety here. This is one of my favorite crops to grow because it's so bright and colorful in the garden. Also, you can grow it all season long. It's typically a cool season crop, but we can get away with leaving it in the garden over the summer to add some interest and color, and then come back and start harvesting again in the fall. Look at these seeds. They're kind of interestingly shaped. They're a bit bigger and easier to work with. And so for these, we want to go about 6-inch spacing, which I always think of as kind of the width of my hand. And these are going to be covered a little bit more, than our radish and spinach. We want to cover these seeds with about 1/2 inch of soil. And of course, after we get all these seeds in, you want to water everything in really well to get them started. Now, onions are planted a little bit differently. They still are spaced at 4-inch intervals. Now, if you want to harvest some of your onions as green onions, you can actually place them about 2 inches apart like this, and then come back in and you would pull every other onion to harvest in that green stage. But if you're going to grow your onions up without harvesting, go ahead and space them at that full 4 inches to give them plenty of room for the bulbs to develop. And you can see I dug a fairly deep trench here. I'm on the edge of a slope, so it might be a little deceiving how deep or shallow it is. But what our goal is to cover these onions with about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of soil. And primarily I'm pushing in from the outside of my trench to cover these up. So you should see the green stems coming up above the soil as they're set in place. That one didn't quite get deep enough. If you don't want to dig trenches, you can use like a small bulb planter to get your onions in place. Now, once everything's planted, we want to water these in, but you do need to be careful when you're watering seeds in, especially the smaller the seed, because the soil will splash and it could make seeds go deeper into the soil or come up more shallowly. So using a gentle sprinkle from a watering can or even drip irrigation works wonderfully. Keep your seeds evenly moist to allow them to germinate, but avoid having them too wet, just as we would any other plant. Remember to come back and check on your vegetables in a couple of weeks to see if they need to be thinned out, and enjoy an easy crop and a great experience to share with family members.
So here are a couple of common winter annual or biennial weeds that we find growing across Oklahoma at this time of year. The first one you see here with the purple flowers is called henbit. And a henbit, you can often see this growing in the lawn in Oklahoma at this time of year, and you'll notice these pretty purple flowers on it. And henbit can often be confused with another winter annual weed, purple dead nettle, that also has the purple flowers, but they can be differentiated by their leaves. Another weed that's growing in here and often grows together with the henbit is the Carolina Geranium. And the Carolina Geranium is a little bit lower growing, does not have the purple flowers, and you see the leaves here usually are 5 to 7 with deep lobes in them. Now, this weed can also be confused with common mallow, which has a very similar looking leaf but just does not have the lobes, but rather has a rounded toothed edge to it. And all of these weeds are sometimes confused with another one called ground ivy or creeping Charlie. And the biggest difference with ground ivy is it's actually perennial, where these other weeds are winter annuals. Now, regardless of which weeds you have, you can control them with application of a 3-way type herbicide product. Now, these products can control broadleaf weeds, and they contain 2,4-D, Dicamba, and Mecoprop or MCPP. So a lot of times at this time of year, you'll see people's yards turn blue or green And usually what's happening is a lawn service company or someone has went out and sprayed that yard, maybe with a pre-emergent herbicide, but probably also contains that three-way type broadleaf killer along with maybe glyphosate. Now with the glyphosate, that can only be applied to Bermuda grass lawns when the Bermuda grass is dormant, such as in January or February in Oklahoma, and should not be applied to tall fescue lawns. If you have a tall fescue lawn, only go with the three-ray product and don't apply the glyphosate. And as always, read the label and apply to label directions.
Clematis can be a challenging group of plants to prune because there's several different varieties that are all pruned at different times of the year. And the pruning is based on when the plants flower. So we typically can break up clematis into three groups. The first are those that bloom in the springtime, typically April or May in Oklahoma, and they're pruned immediately after bloom. But no later than July, because we want to give the plant plenty of time for that new growth to harden off. Now we don't have any spring bloomers here in the gardens, but we do have a number of summer blooming. The summer blooming group includes most of our common hybrids with the really large colorful flowers. And these also bloom on old wood, and they also bloom on new wood. But our biggest burst of flowers, the ones that come in around June, are on the old wood. So in the winter time, we don't want to come in and cut this plant back because we'll lose all of our blossoms. But if you do look at the plant in the winter, when you come out and do your pruning, you'll see plenty of dead material. The vines are rather brittle, they sometimes get cold damage, and these can be cut back. And when you cut back your dead material, you want to keep cutting until you find some new live growth. And this one is going to keep going back pretty far. It could be that the entire shoot is dead, but as you go, you'll see if it's still brown and flaky, we don't have living material. Now, as you cut back into your fresh growth, just keep an eye on how the plant's growing. You don't want to cut into the main trunk. The other thing, when it's done flowering, we could come back and give this a heavy pruning. In fact, we can remove up to 1/3, 2/3 of the plant material, tame in the size. That's a great time to rein in your clematis, but it'll also promote new flush of growth, which will bring a new set of flowers, and that's always welcomed in the garden. Now, one thing that we want to look at is pruning newly planted clematis. A common problem is planting a new clematis and then just leaving it. And what happens is you end up with one or two really long shoots that just grow and grow, and we don't get a nice full plant. So in the first and second year after planting a clematis, what we really want to do is cut the shoots back to about 12 to 18 inches. And do this again in the first year and then in the second year. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut off all this material while I'm at it. And while it feels like we're taking away all that plant, what we're going to be doing is encouraging new shoot production to come out from the base down here. And we'll end up with a bushier vine that will have many shoots and much more beauty and flowers. Now, our last group of clematis is the fall blooming variety, and we'll look at our sweet autumn clematis. Fall blooming clematis bloom on new growth, so that means we could come in the winter time to prune the plant for managing the size or shape. And the way we prune these is by cutting the stems back to a height of about 18 inches to 2 feet above ground level. But when we do this, we want to ensure that we have at least 2 sets of good buds on each stem. So here's a stem coming up from the base, and as we look down, we can see that there's one set of buds there. They're actually starting to open with this nice weather we've had. Here's another set and another set. So I would want to cut and leave at a minimum 2 of these, but since I want to cut it to about 2 feet, I'm actually going to leave about 3 sets. And so we'll do this for all the shoots. It's a little bit of slow work, but if you imagine all the new flowers that we're going to get as the plant opens up. It's certainly worth a little bit of investment. Now, if you want the plant to grow higher, to climb a large trellis, you could bring your pruning back at different heights to accommodate the structure that you're growing on. This graceful evergreen is a favorite among our garden staff. This is a Deodar cedar variety called Snow Sprite, and the plant just holds that beautiful blue-green foliage that colors so well throughout the winter. Now, the new growth is actually tinged white and turns to more of a creamy yellow with age. This is a really compact evergreen. It'll reach a size of about 4 to 5 feet in 10 years. So not quickly growing. Over several decades, it can max out at about 15 feet. I wouldn't expect that in Oklahoma. It's also a very drought tolerant species, which is great. We could include this in our xeriscape plantings. And there's a standard form of this, which can provide a more formal appearance if you want to put it maybe around your entrance. But with this small size, it really doesn't take up a lot of space and can fit very easily into most any garden. Certainly a wonderful dwarf evergreen for Oklahoma gardens.
Today I'm here to talk about pre-emergent weed control. So here we are out here. It is February in Oklahoma, and we're out here at the research station, and we've set up a little area here. What we want to do is actually do a demonstration for you to show you several different products you can apply now and that will control weeds in the summertime. So you probably have seen weeds in your yard in the summer like crabgrass or goosegrass, weedy grasses like that that'll come up and compete with your desired turf grass. Well, to control those, we actually have to apply pre-emergent products right now at this time of the year to prevent those grasses from germinating and emerging and coming up in your lawn. And so we have an area right here where historically we've had a lot of crabgrass issues, and we've just set up different little flagged areas out here that will represent plots, and we're actually going to apply several different products with different active ingredients to see how they work. So for the homeowner, there are several different options that you can use, and probably the #1 best option is actually to call your local lawn and weed control service in your town and have them come out and take care of your yard for you. But if you are the do-it-yourself type, this job can be done on your own. And so there are several different choices. Which one should you choose? Which one works best? Well, that can be tough for a consumer to figure out. So if you go to your local store, you may see some products that are in a bag, maybe like this or like this, and those products usually have pre-emergence, but they're attached to a fertilizer. Well, right now our grass is not actively growing, so if we go out and put those products down right now, we're putting out fertilizer and the weed control product, but the fertilizer is not going to be actively taken up by your desired grass right now. So there's more chance that fertilizer can be lost either due to runoff or through leaching through the soil. So we want to hold off on those right now. Maybe wait to put those out till just when the grass is closer to greening up. So you might find different products in a bottle, but when you go to your store, it may be hard to find something that's for a pre-emergent weed control. So you might have to check out your agricultural chemical store or your farmer's co-op or something like that in your town. So some of the names you might see are like Surfland, Oxadiazone or Ronstar, Flumioxazin, Dithiopyr, Pendimethalin, Prodiamine, Indaziflam, Dimethanid or Bensulide, and there are several others that I'm not listing here that's not in our trial. So we're going to spray these different products for this demonstration trial here. Now today it's way too windy for us to be out spraying any pesticides, so we're going to do that on another date. But then we're going to come back after we spray, and we're going to show you in several months later. We'll come back this summer and show you how these different products worked. One more thing I want to mention is that if you look for these products and you are the do-it-yourself type, a lot of times in your ag stores you can only buy this product maybe in a 2.5 gallon jug or something like that, and you may only need to use 6 ounces of this product. So if you were to buy that, that would last you more than probably 5 or 6 lifetimes. It's way too much product to use, and that's why we do highly recommend just hiring a professional, having them do this for you. But we want to educate you to see the different products and how they work, and try to control those weeds for the summer.
Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. For those of you who missed last week's episode, you might be wondering who I am. My name is Kim Rebeck, and I'm going to be your new host here at Oklahoma Gardening. After 7.5 years as host of Oklahoma Gardening, it's time for me to move on to new adventures. It has certainly been an incredible experience working with the Oklahoma Gardening team and also getting to know gardeners throughout the state. I truly believe that the people of Oklahoma are blessed to have the legacy of Oklahoma Gardening, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. Thank you all for 7 wonderful years, and I want to particularly send my thanks out to the staff here, Kevin Gregg, Laura Payne, Jane Carter, David Hillock, Barbara Brown, Stephanie Larimer, and all the gardeners here at the Botanic Garden. Though it's hard to leave Oklahoma Gardening behind, I'm excited to announce my new initiative, Earthbound, which unites my passion for travel with my love of gardening. I'll be offering guided tours to some of the world's greatest gardens, starting with a tour to Japan this coming November. Now, many of our viewers may remember the videos that we shared from Oklahoma Gardening's trip to Japan a few years back. I'm excited to offer gardeners around the state the opportunity to visit some of these gardens and many more during an educational and cultural excursion. At Earthbound, I'll offer opportunities to learn about the historical and cultural context of the places we'll visit, and also provide a background on garden history. I believe that such preparation enriches the travel experience. You could follow my gardening adventures at www.kimtoscano.com. Here you'll find information on all these tours, as well as inspiration for some weekend adventures and cross-country journeys for your own garden experience. And of course, I'll be sharing plenty of tips on gardening and design to keep you growing. Though I'm leaving Oklahoma Gardening, I'm not leaving the garden community of Oklahoma. As I join the ranks of our former hosts, I'll continue to be involved in horticulture throughout the state, just as they've been.
And as we welcome Kim to this group of former hosts, we as former hosts want to reassure you, our viewers, that we will continue to do some very excellent programming on gardening during the interim until we do get another permanent host. I'm Ray Campbell, one of the early hosts of Oklahoma Gardening, and myself, along with Brenda Sanders and Steve Owens, and also Steve Dobbs, a former host who is not with us today, will continue in the interim to do quality programming for you, the viewers. In addition to that, you will also see more familiar faces. People such as Barbara Brown will continue to work with us, as will David Hillock, as will Justin Moss, who is on frequently, and Shelley Mitchell. Some of these names I know and faces that you will remember. And so we want to let our new viewers, as well as our faithful viewers, know that Oklahoma Gardening will continue just like we have for the past 40 years in bringing you, as Kim said, premier and up-to-date gardening information for Oklahoma gardeners. We also want to let you know that after this week, Oklahoma Gardening will be going on a short hiatus for the festival, OETA fundraising festival, but we will be back on March the 21st to welcome you again to a new gardening season here on Oklahoma Gardening. And so until then, stay with us and happy gardening as you start your spring gardening this spring.
We're at the Cimarron Correctional Facility in Cushing, continually amazed by the diversity of Oklahoma's native habitats. Have you guys learned a lot out here in the garden?
Yes.
Yeah.
Houses with the internet.
Yeah,
a lot of people do.
This is a big one. And well, Marquette, you have such a beautiful and inviting landscape. Repeatedly in his work is the council ring, and this is a simple stone circle. This situation, we're releasing that water slowly, but you can actually use this type of system
To store the water, correct?
Yes, you can use it to store the water.
This arm is a 5-foot length of 2x4, and you have to connect more than one sheet together. To fill your hole, you can use vapor barrier tape. Until we meet again next week on Oklahoma Gardening.
Oklahoma Gardening will not be shown on the main OETA channel for the next 3 weeks. We hope you enjoy OETA's festival programming and encourage you to consider making a donation. In the interim, you can find re-aired episodes of the show on the OETA Okla channel, and we'll be back with new episodes starting March 21st. So join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. For additional information, show notes, plant lists, recipes, and fact sheets, visit our website or contact your local Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service office. Segments from this episode, along with hundreds more from previous episodes, are available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Oklahoma Gardening. Be sure to join our Facebook group for information on upcoming episodes and gardening events, photos, and discussions of gardening topics. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens. This outdoor television studio is made possible with the help of our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.